The rain hadn't stopped since midnight. It came down in heavy sheets, washing the quiet suburban streets in a silvery blur. Officer Riley Monroe adjusted the windshield wipers on her cruiser, watching them swipe rhythmically as she made her early morning rounds through the outer neighborhoods of Fairview. Her thermos of coffee sat untouched in the cup holder, its steam long since faded. She liked this part of the shift. No sirens, no noise. Just the city still asleep, and her alone with the drizzle and the hum of tires on wet pavement. But then she saw it. A flicker in her rearview mirror. Movement low to the ground, just beyond the reach of her taillights. At first, she thought it was a shadow, or maybe a loose plastic bag fluttering down the road. But when she slowed down and glanced again, her heart gave a small jolt. It was a puppy. A tiny, drenched German Shepherd pup, no older than a few months, soaked to the skin and keeping pace behind her cruiser like it had nowhere else to go. She blinked. Tapped the brakes. The puppy stopped too, panting, eyes wide. There was no collar. No leash. Just that wild, rain-matted fur and those dark, desperate eyes locked onto her like she was the only soul left on earth. Riley pulled over. She stepped out into the rain, the door creaking open as her boots splashed into a puddle. The pup didn't flinch. If anything, it took a step forward, tail lowered, shivering from more than just the cold. "What are you doing out here?" she murmured, squatting down slowly, hand extended. The puppy didn't bark, didn't whimper. It simply walked forward with trembling legs, pressed its soaked body against her knee, and looked up at her like it had been searching for her all night. That was when Riley felt it. Not fear, not suspicion, just a chill that wasn't from the rain. Something was off. Not with the puppy. With the way it stared at her like it knew her. Like it had waited. She reached down and scooped it up. The poor thing barely weighed anything. Its paws were caked with mud, and it reeked of wet leaves and something faintly metallic. Blood? Her patrol radio crackled. "Unit 27, any updates?" Riley hesitated before pressing the mic. "Dispatch, this is Monroe. I've encountered a stray. Pausing patrol temporarily. Might need to check for a chip." She set the puppy in the passenger seat, wrapping it in her emergency fleece from the trunk. It didn't protest, just sat there, eyes still on her. But when she turned the cruiser around to head back toward the station, the puppy growled. "Low. Urgent. A warning." She blinked. "What is it?" It clawed at the passenger window. Not frantically, but with purpose. Then it looked back at her, let out a single whine, and stared ahead, toward the woods lining the street. Riley frowned, glancing through the rain-drenched windshield. "You want me to follow you?" It barked once. She shut off the engine. "I must be losing my mind," she muttered, but still. She grabbed her flashlight, holstered her sidearm, and lifted the puppy again. The cold bit through her uniform as she stepped off the road and into the brush, the little shepherd squirming with excitement now, tail twitching with each step. The woods here weren't thick, but they were soaked. Branches clawed at her sleeves, and her boots sank into soft, overgrown earth. The puppy wriggled, then leapt from her arms and took off through the underbrush, pausing only to make sure she was still following. "Wait, slow down," Riley hissed, picking up speed. Her flashlight beam darted through the mist and trees. The rain hissed in the leaves above like whispering ghosts. For a moment she thought she'd lost the pup, but then came the bark again. Urgent. Frantic. She rounded a bend near the old maintenance trail and saw it. A collapsed shed, half swallowed by mud, its roof caved in and the ground beneath it torn up as if by heavy machinery, or a struggle. The puppy was standing near a ditch beside the wreckage. Whining. Riley raised her flashlight. That's when she saw the shape in the dirt. At first, she thought it was just a piece of tarp or cloth. But then the beam caught on skin, pale, muddied, unmoving. She rushed forward, heart thudding in her ears, and dropped to her knees beside the figure. Her hands trembled as she swept more soil aside. It was a woman. Young. Barely conscious. Bruises bloomed across her face and arms. Her breath was shallow, lips cracked. She was half buried in wet leaves and mud, like someone had tried to conceal her and left her for dead. Jesus, dispatch, I need EMS to Old Creek Trail now. Female victim, alive but barely, possible assault. She pressed her jacket over the woman's chest, trying to keep her warm. The puppy curled up beside the woman, nose nudging her cheek. It let out a soft, mournful sound. Not barking, not panicking, just staying. Like it had been there all along. Riley looked between them, her thoughts racing. There was no way the puppy found her by accident. No way it tracked her down and led her here just because it got lucky. It had known. But how? As the sirens wailed in the distance and the storm rumbled overhead, Riley stared into the puppy's eyes, so dark and familiar, and whispered, "Who are you?" The puppy didn't blink. Just stared back, as if it was asking her the same thing. And for the first time in over a year, Riley felt something crack open deep in her chest. Hope. By the time EMTs arrived, the rain had thinned into a mist that clung to the trees like breath on glass. Blue and red lights flashed through the forest, casting eerie colors across the scene. Fallen leaves, the broken shed, and the barely breathing woman wrapped in Riley's jacket. The puppy hadn't moved from her side. As the paramedics worked quickly, oxygen mask, stretcher, whispered commands, Riley stood back, soaked and tense, watching the dog. It sat unmoving, protectively near the woman's shoulder, its small body vibrating with every breath she took. "She's lucky," one EMT muttered as they loaded the woman onto the stretcher. "In this weather, another hour out here and she'd have gone hypothermic." Riley didn't speak. Her eyes stayed locked on the woman's bruised face, her mud-streaked hands. And then, quietly, her gaze dropped to the puppy, ears down, tail still. He'd saved her. That much was clear. Back at the station, the rain had finally stopped. The roads glistened with silver light as Riley pulled into the parking lot, the puppy curled up beside her on the passenger seat. She left the cruiser running with the heat on and stepped out to grab a towel from the back. She paused. Something pulled at her, something more than the mystery, more than the adrenaline. A thread inside her had started to unravel. She looked through the windshield at the little shepherd pup now curled tight like it was protecting something invisible. She didn't know why, but her heart ached just looking at him. Inside the precinct, the mood was hushed. Everyone had heard about the victim in the woods. People whispered. Riley logged the call and her report with stiff fingers, then turned to the evidence locker to scan the chip from the puppy. A vet would check it properly, but protocol required the first sweep now. The scanner beeped once. Then again. A green light blinked, chip detected. "Come on, give me something," she muttered. The screen flashed with a code, then slowly pulled up a registered name. Beckett, Amanda. Address: 1710 Crosswell Lane. Contact: Rachel Beckett, mother. Riley blinked. She'd seen that name before, on the bulletin board in the hallway. She jogged to it, heart racing. A missing persons flyer stared back at her from the wall. Amanda Beckett, 22. Last seen 3 nights ago, leaving the university campus. No known medical conditions. No known threats. No dog. Riley's fingers tightened around the flyer. No dog. She scanned it again. There was no mention of a pet. No photo of the shepherd pup. According to the family, Amanda lived alone. Quiet. Focused. Pre-vet student. She called the mother immediately. The voice on the other end of the line trembled with hope and exhaustion. Yes, Amanda's alive? She's at County General. Alive, unconscious but stable. Found in the woods, near the old train path. Oh my God! There was a dog with her, Riley added gently. A puppy, actually. A German shepherd. It's chipped to Amanda's name. There was silence on the line. Then, confusion. No, Rachel said quietly. Amanda didn't have a dog. She never mentioned one. You're sure? I would know. She's allergic to dog fur. Her whole life. She loved animals, wanted to help them, but she's never owned a dog. It would have made her sick. Riley froze. She looked through the glass into the cruiser, where the puppy now sat alert again, staring straight at her through the windshield. But the chip was registered to her name, Riley said slowly. Then something's wrong, Rachel said. That's not her dog. 2 hours later, Riley stood at Amanda's hospital bedside. The young woman was pale, and force snaking out of her bruised hand. The doctors said she was stable, but barely. Dehydrated. Malnourished. Likely unconscious for much of the past 48 hours. Her throat was torn raw, probably from screaming. The puppy had sat in Riley's cruiser the entire time, whining softly every few minutes. A nurse approached quietly. She's waking up. Amanda's eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted, dry and chapped, as she slowly looked around. Panic flashed in her eyes. Easy, Riley said gently. You're safe. You're in a hospital. Amanda's gaze darted around, then landed on Riley. You were there, she whispered. I found you, Riley nodded. The paramedics helped. But it wasn't just me. Amanda's breath hitched. The dog. Riley's eyebrows lifted. He found you. Amanda stared at the ceiling. A tear slipped from the corner of her eye. No, he didn't find me. He was already there. What do you mean? Amanda blinked slowly, her voice faint. When I woke up in the mud, I thought I was alone. But he was there. Just sitting. Watching me. She closed her eyes. He brought me food. Bits of something. I don't even know what. He wouldn't leave. I thought maybe I imagined him. But he kept lying next to me. Keeping me warm. Riley's stomach twisted. And you'd never seen him before? She asked carefully. Amanda shook her head. Never. That night, back at the station, Riley sat alone at her desk, the chipped mug of cold coffee untouched beside her. She stared at the puppy, now asleep in a blanket near the heater. It didn't make sense. Amanda was allergic. She never owned a dog. The chip registered under her name, but there was no evidence of her ever registering a pet before. The timing was impossible. And yet, the dog had known where to go. Had found her. Or maybe had been waiting for someone to find her. She reached under the desk drawer and pulled out a faded photo from a torn envelope. It was her and Max, her old K9 partner, taken 3 years ago. Max in full vest, tongue out, eyes alert and intelligent. Max had died during a robbery gone wrong. Took a bullet meant for Riley. She buried him herself. She looked from the photo to the puppy. Same eyes. Same stare. Same scar under the front right leg. Her breath caught in her throat. No, she whispered. That's not possible. But the puppy stirred, lifted his head, and looked right at her. And wagged his tail once. The next morning, Riley stood outside Amanda Beckett's hospital room with a knot in her chest. She could hear quiet voices beyond the door. Amanda's parents had arrived. Through the small window, she saw them clinging to their daughter like they were afraid she might disappear again. They were crying. The dog sat by Riley's feet in the hallway, perfectly still, ears alert. He hadn't barked or whined once since they walked in. His fur had dried, and someone had cleaned the mud from his legs. But he still smelled faintly like pine and wet earth. Still stared like he knew something nobody else did. Rachel Beckett stepped out into the hallway moments later, red-eyed, clutching a used tissue. She's awake now, she said. Still weak. Still shaken. But she's asking for you. Riley nodded, hesitating. Your daughter said the dog was already there when she woke up, she said cautiously. She doesn't remember where he came from? Rachel shook her head. None of us have ever seen him before. And I swear, she's never owned a dog. Not in this house. Not on campus. It would have triggered her asthma. Riley glanced down. The pup looked back up at her, almost expectantly. Mind if I bring him in? Rachel hesitated. Then she nodded. Inside, Amanda looked like she'd aged a year overnight. She was propped up on pillows, pale, her arms bruised but eyes brighter today. When she saw the dog, her expression softened into something broken and grateful. You brought him, she whispered. Riley sat beside her. You gave him a name? Amanda shook her head slowly. I didn't have to. He felt familiar. She reached a shaking hand toward him, and the pup jumped up lightly, setting his front paws on the mattress without hesitation. His head nestled against her hand as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. "I don't understand," Amanda murmured. "Why would he stay with me? He was so small. He could have run." Riley's voice was quiet. "You said he was already there when you woke up?" Amanda nodded. "It was like he'd been waiting." Riley leaned back, her mind spinning. She had the hospital vet tech run another scan. They confirmed the chip, but it had no manufacturer tag, no clinic, no owner history, just a single name. Maximus. Riley went still. That wasn't just a name. It was his name. Maximus, her Max, had been her partner for 6 years. K9 Unit Bravo. Trained from birth, fiercely loyal, smart beyond belief. Died in her arms after taking a bullet in a pawn shop standoff. She'd buried him behind the old police training center, marked the grave herself with his favorite tennis ball and collar. She hadn't spoken his name in nearly a year. Not until now. She stared at the puppy, small, alert, the same eyes. The same tilt of the head when she whispered his name. Couldn't be. Could it? Back at the precinct, Riley pulled up her archived case logs. Max had died the same week Amanda began her clinical rotation at the nearby vet college. It meant nothing, but it gnawed at her all the same. And there was more. She met with a local tech expert, an off-duty analyst who owed her a few favors. She handed him the chip data file. "Can you trace this ID number?" It came from the puppy. He scanned the encrypted line of data, eyes narrowing. Then frowning. "There's no chip registry under this code," he muttered. "It's not in any system, national or international." "But it scanned," Riley pressed. "The scanner found it." "Yeah, but here's the thing, there's no manufacturer code. That's standard on all implants. This chip shouldn't exist." Riley's spine stiffened. "What's it say, then?" He turned the monitor toward her. One word blinked on the decrypted line. "Return." Riley stared at it, unable to speak. That night, she drove out to Max's grave. The old training field behind the precinct was quiet, bathed in moonlight. The grass had overgrown the headstone she'd built. Just a slab of wood with Maximus 2015 to 2023 burned into the surface. The puppy stepped beside her, ears perked. "This is where I buried you," she whispered. He sat down and looked up at her. Not wagging. Not barking. Just waiting. "Max," she said softly. The puppy blinked, then walked forward and placed his paw, his small, muddy paw, right at the base of the stone. And sat there. The exact spot her Max used to sit every time she trained him. Same posture. Same stillness. Same calm alertness, like he was waiting for the next command. Tears stung Riley's eyes. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "You died." She sat down beside him, heart pounding in her ears. "And if you didn't, if something brought you back, why her? Why Amanda?" The puppy turned, looked at her, and nudged something out of the grass. She blinked. It was the old, sun-faded K9 badge Max used to wear on his collar. The one that went missing during his burial. It had somehow surfaced again, half buried in the dirt. Riley picked it up with trembling hands. Her voice cracked. "You didn't come back for me." She looked toward the puppy, Max, whatever he was. "You came back to finish one last mission." The wind whispered through the tall grass. And Max sat quietly beside her, as if saying, "I never left." Riley hadn't slept. The badge sat on her desk, scuffed and dull but unmistakable, Maximus Unit #K9-37. Her fingerprints covered the metal now, but her memory covered it more. She still hadn't explained it to anyone. Not to the station vet, not to her captain, not even to Amanda. Because how do you explain that the dog you buried over a year ago might have clawed his way back? Not for you, but for someone else. Her mind returned again and again to the word burned into the chip registry. Return. Not home. Not owner. Not even Maximus. Just return. As if he'd never left. As if death was just another call to answer. That morning, Amanda was discharged from the hospital. Her parents offered to take her back to their farm outside town, a quiet place with space to heal. Riley was there when they wheeled her out. Max, because Riley had stopped pretending now, walked beside her chair the whole time. "He doesn't want to leave," Amanda said, one hand resting on the puppy's back. "He's always been like that," Riley murmured. Amanda gave her a strange look. "What do you mean?" Riley hesitated. She knelt down, adjusting Max's new collar, the one he used to wear, still stored in her drawer, as if she'd always known he'd need it again. "There was a dog," she said softly. "Before him. His name was Max. My partner for 6 years. He saved lives, tracked missing kids, took a bullet for me during a call-out." Amanda listened, eyes wide. "I buried him with that badge you saw. Behind the precinct. I saw him take his last breath." A long silence passed between them. Amanda's fingers curled into the puppy's fur. "But this puppy," Riley continued, "same scar under the front leg, same stare, same quiet way of watching people. He even sits in the exact same spot in my cruiser." Amanda whispered, "Do you think it's him?" "I think," Riley looked at Max, who looked back with calm, intelligent eyes, "that some dogs don't understand the word gone. Not when there's still work to do." Later that day, Riley drove out to the Beckett property. Just to check in, she told herself. But really, something had started to itch at the back of her brain. Because Amanda had been taken, dumped in the woods, left to die. No ransom, no note, no lead. And someone had wanted her forgotten. Rachel Beckett met her at the gate. "She's resting. Still tired." "I just want to talk," Riley said. "Off the record." They sat on the porch, late autumn breeze stirring the wind chimes. Max laid beside Riley's boots, eyes half-lidded but ears alert. "There's something I didn't put in the report," Riley began. "Amanda said the puppy didn't find her. He was already there. Waiting." Rachel folded her arms. "That's what she told me too." "Did Amanda mention anyone from her classes? A professor, maybe? Someone acting strange lately?" Rachel hesitated. "There was someone. A teaching assistant. She said he gave her a weird feeling. Always lingered too long. He'd message her even when she didn't respond." "Name?" "Devin Reese." That name hit Riley like ice water. Devin Reese. Registered for trespassing 3 years ago. Animal cruelty case that never went to court. The same name Max had tracked once during an illegal kennel investigation. She stood immediately. "I need to go." Max was already on his feet, tail stiff. By the time Riley reached Devin's apartment, it was already dusk. The building was one of those forgotten corners of Fairview. Cracked windows, mildew creeping up brick, garbage bins overturned in the alley. Riley knocked once. No answer. She knocked again. "Fairview PD, Devin Reese?" Still nothing. But Max growled, low, deep in his throat. Riley drew her sidearm. The door creaked open with one push. Inside, the smell hit her first. Rot. Bleach. Decay poorly masked. The walls were covered in news clippings. Some of Amanda, others of animals. Doodles. Note. Map. And in the center of it all, photos of Amanda in class, in the cafeteria, even entering her apartment. Riley's pulse thundered. Then she saw the cage. Empty now, but big enough for a person. Chains at the base. A tuft of blonde hair caught in the hinge. She turned to Max. "You found her, didn't you?" The dog looked at the cage. Then back at her. He had known. Even in death, he'd known. The arrest came swiftly after that. The evidence was overwhelming. Devin confessed in a cold, detached voice. "I was going to go back," he said. "But something was there. Watching me." Riley didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. A week later, Amanda stood in front of the training center where Max was buried. This time, there was a new plaque beside the old wooden one. "Maximus, K9-37. You returned. Mission complete." Riley placed the collar on the grave. She wasn't going to use it again. Max, this pup, this mystery, this miracle, sat at her side like he'd never left. Amanda knelt beside him. So what happens now? Riley looked at her. Now he gets to rest. Amanda tilted her head. You're not keeping him? He didn't come back for me this time. Amanda's voice cracked. But I can't, he saved me. Riley smiled. That's what he does. She reached into her pocket and handed Amanda a small folded note. It was the final entry from her old casebook, written the day Max died. He never asked for thanks. Only a command. And when there was no command, he waited for one more mission. Amanda hugged the pup tight, tears slipping down her cheek. He didn't move, just let her cry. And somewhere behind them, the wind stirred the tall grass. Not cold, not cruel, just quiet, like peace, like a job well done.